Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of I'll Start on Monday, the podcast. And today, as you know, we usually talk about anything that has to do with the procrastination theme of I'll Start on Monday. And today I have a special guest. Her name is Stella Tokar. She is a speaker, consultant, elite certified in both the neuroencoding method of coaching as well as with Dr. Amen with the Amen Clinics. And she is also the CEO of Bold Consulting. So we'll ask a little bit more about her consulting business as well. And as you can see in her background, she has the Neuroencoding Institute background on for us. And I'd really love that she came here today to talk to us about her experiences with I'll Start on Mondays and also as a consultant and coach, what she hears about people talking about this in her own and her um, own way that she's dealt with I'll Start on Monday syndromes and then tell us yeah, and I'd love for her to tell us a little bit more about her background as well. So Stella, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. I'm loving the name of this program, because, Yayoi, this is rampant. This is in everyday life of the everyday person around the world. We were military. My husband had a career in the military, and now we're on the civilian side of life, and it doesn't matter wherever we lived in the world, this was a topic of conversation, and I've been coaching and consulting for 40 years, not always with brain specifically funneled to brain health, but I've always brought in the thinking part of our decision making, our everyday life, how our thoughts impact that. And the certifications came along a little bit later, but I was in the business world and it just came up all the time. You know, people have goals in
Yeah.
business for themselves, their teams, and their business. And helping navigate all of that was, um, it showed up that people always want to procrastinate or
Yes.
put off, or sometimes they don't even realize they're doing it. So,
Yes. Yes, and procrastination is really a fear, and I think a lot of us forget that, especially we're not when we don't work with this or just regular people. They're like, oh yeah, I procrastinate. I'm gonna put it off. They put it off, and what's at the bottom of it is really fear.
mhm,
And I'm sure, you've seen that in your career. And like you said, you were in the military, so I'm sure you traveled around the world. So you know that in any culture, this happens. It's almost human nature that
mhm.
well, it's human nature to have fear. We should have fear, in some way or another. Even like when we were in the prehistoric, caveman times, we should have had fear or else we were going to be eaten up. So that and it's really lasted throughout our lives, and it's a programming, I believe, that's just my thinking, that it's
Mhm,
programming that was instilled in us from early on, and it was it was meant to be a good way to protect us. Parents want to protect us, so they instill a little fear, saying, "Oh, you shouldn't do this or that," and I think that becomes a programming that runs in your brain, and sometimes we don't realize that we have to switch the software or the program
mhm, mhm.
that's in us.
And you're right, it's a brain health condition. That's really all it is. Procrastination, you're right, it lives in the brain, and it is wrapped in fear, and it's in the piece of the brain called the amygdala, which is part of the limbic system, which is our emotional center. And the two biggest parts of our brain are the prefrontal cortex, the analytical, it's called the executive center,
Yes.
where our reasoning, we analyze things, we try to decipher for decision making, and we make 35,000 decisions a day. Some are unconscious, some are conscious, just like what shoes should I wear? It's automatic. Those are
Yes.
unconscious decisions. We don't have to spend a lot of time doing that. But then the brain is we have to be careful of fatigue, decision overload
Yes.
and decide. So when the amygdala is in that fight or flight, that fear syndrome,
Yes. Yes.
the prefrontal cortex can't analyze
Yeah.
because that takes over. And you're right. We were programmed, our brain was programmed to protect us.
Yes.
And so when we realize that the brain, the organ, the brain does not have the ability to know right from wrong, to make a decision, to know good from bad, healthy or unhealthy. It doesn't have that capacity.
Yes.
Where we come in with the organ is
Yes.
that we create the mindset or the psychology of the brain based on the episodes of life and how we decide we're going to program or where those things fall into our life. And then we begin to build a mindset, a
Yes.
psychology, a belief system based on all of that input. So when fear shows up, it detracts from all that. And
Yes.
because it has it the brain thinks it has to protect us.
Yes.
What we don't realize is that we have not created the mindset that is productive around that. So procrastination can slip in there,
Yes.
and we're not even aware of it. So
So true.
being more mindful of that process that the brain is neuroplastic. It's constantly evolving and regenerating itself. And if we don't learn to take advantage of that and create and get involved in that process, then
Yeah.
we lose out.
Yeah. I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's like with computers, right? When they first came out, you know, believe me, I was doing the punch code things. The cards. I started
Sure.
there, so I
Yeah.
know. And the thing is, you can resist it, but it's there, and you have to kind of like utilize it for your lifestyle. And I think
Mhm.
with life in general, anything in life, you have to kind of like things around you are going to change. New elements are going to appear. So you have to figure out how am I going to use that to my advantage?
Mhm.
For my own survival, for my not survival, but for me to thrive, for a
Mhm.
person to thrive. How can I use these things? And we forget that our brain is the same. And I don't think there's enough attention put on the brain,
Right.
because, they go, "Oh, the brain, that's just part of what we are." They don't realize that a lot of people don't realize that it's like the CPU of your life, of
Mhm.
your body,
Mhm.
of your emotions, and a lot of things. So I think, it's such brilliant work that you do and, including all of that into your consulting, into your coaching business and all of that. Now,
Well,
I know go ahead.
no, those are aha moments for my
Yes,
clients.
yes,
When I tell them your brain doesn't have the ability to make a decision, it doesn't know right from wrong. It only knows patterns.
yes,
You're creating the patterns through your psychology and your belief system and how you create a mindset. And they're kind of blown away by that because what do you mean my brain's not making decisions? How does that happen then? And then they go into a learning mode.
yes,
And when you understand that you really can take your thoughts captive, you create the mindset.
yes,
The brain doesn't do that. If you leave it up to the brain, it will always default to the negative because it's there to protect us
yes,
organically,
yeah,
primally. It's
yes,
there to protect us. So if you let your brain do all that work, you're going to be negative all the time. You're not going to accomplish. You've got to get involved in the mindset, the psychology of the brain, and set it up for success.
yes,
And then it finds a new default.
right.
It's
And it's
called a
like
pattern interrupt.
yep,
You
exactly.
interrupt those negative patterns and you create the patterns that are going to serve you. And all of a sudden the brain loves systems. It loves to
Oh,
be in a
oh,
pattern.
yes,
So when you create the right patterns that are productive, all of a sudden it starts noticing, oh, a new pattern
yeah,
and it becomes a new default, and those
right,
unhealthy patterns will fall away.
Exactly, exactly, and those are one of the main teachings that we do in the Neuroencoding Institute, as a fellow neuroencoder. We do that all the time, and
Yeah.
I think it's something that we need to tell people because people don't know that. A lot of
Yeah.
people, general public don't know that the brain that's what the function of the
Mhm.
you can change things in the brain so that you can utilize it for your best advantage, and then you can set it up for, success. And
Yeah.
and it sounds easy, and the theory is very easy, but
It's
in
a lot of work.
it is. And it's with like anything else. There's always going to be a learning curve when you wanna change, when you want to learn something new. Um, Even like if you wanted to learn, I don't know why skateboarding came to mind, but, if you wanted to learn how to skateboard, you're not gonna be able to do it just by watching YouTube and, watching and reading different things. You have to actually practice and do it. And
Mhm.
by doing it, you're not gonna get on a skateboard and be able to just go woo, and not gonna be able to do all these moves.
Yeah.
You are going to have to practice it and do it, and that's the same thing with your, brain and your belief systems, creating new belief systems and creating new patterns for your brain. Yeah.
Well, and you're right, you brought up habits, and habits, that's all it is. It's routine, again, creating some new neural pathways, new connections in
Yes.
the brain, but also it serves us physically
Yes.
because when we're in routine, like if you're dealing with procrastination and you know it, create a routine that's gonna set you up for the day.
Yes.
Just take one day at a time, tiny little bites. It doesn't, have to be a grandiose thing. Take baby steps, tiny habits, and both Dr. Joseph McClendon III with the Institute and Dr. Amen say the same thing.
Exactly.
Tiny habits are what carve out new pathways and new behaviors. Habits don't have to become your behavior unless they're serving you.
Yes.
And we teach in both institutes, we teach that your thinking becomes your feeling becomes your actions become your behaviors.
Yes.
And when you understand that flow, you don't have to be subject or a slave to
Yeah.
procrastination or
Yes.
whatever it is you're dealing with. When you know that process, then you take control
Yes.
of uh, the automatic negative thought. I even
Thoughts.
taught my grandchildren this. We call it in the Amen Institute, it's called killing the ants, the
Yes.
automatic
Yes.
negative thoughts. We all have them.
Yeah.
When we recognize them, what do we do with them? And so with Dr. Amen, he has 5 questions that you
Yes.
should ask yourself. I won't go into it, but I taught my grandkids, they're ages 7 to 11.
Oh,
I
that's
said, "Do you know you
wonderful.
have ants in your brain that" "What?" And I said, "You know what? But you don't have to. You're
Yes.
in control. It's your brain, not theirs. And
Mhm.
when you give them control, you don't act right, you don't talk right, your behaviors are bad. And so when that happens, you stand up, and I make them stand up because we need to physically get involved
Yes.
in this,
Yes.
right?
Oh, yes.
Stand up and not
Change that
today,
habit.
and this is my brain, my way. And so I've created this
It's
pattern for
wonderful.
them to interrupt that automatic negative thought and start building a new mindset, a new behavior, a new pathway.
Pattern.
Yeah.
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 And
So
and I love
anybody can
that.
do that.
Yes, and I love that, because I teach the ants theory to a lot of people as well because it's an easy way for people to understand it, and it's kind of a fun way to say, when you say, "You have ants in your brain," they're like, "What? Not in my pants, but in my brain?" Things like that, and but it helps to connect that fun
Yes.
into a learning, and, human beings, we like to learn, but we like to learn by doing in a fun way. We don't like to be like, "Oh, we have to learn it in a book, we have to read, blah, 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 blah."
Academics.
No, you Some people love that, but most people like to have fun, and
Mhm.
creating it with an action, with movement,
Mhm.
instills it more into our system. And I love how you taught that to your grandkids. That's a wonderful it's so wonderful because people that are listening to this, they might say, "Oh, okay, I wanna find out a little bit more about that. Maybe I can do that with myself even," right?
Right.
And those are one of the things, I love about this podcast is that we can inform people and people are like, "Oh, I never thought of it that way."
Mhm.
And, it's really quite simple when you think about it, but no one's taught us all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
And
it's a
mhm,
very simple process. I tell my clients that it's a very simple process. It's not hard.
no.
Where we fall off the wagon is the consistency, the
Yes.
sustainable
Yes.
process.
Yes.
So that's where people grow tired, they grow weary, they fall off the path, and they have a hard time finding their way back.
Yes.
So it's creating not only the tiny little habits, giving yourself some grace, so to
Yes.
speak,
Definitely.
and just, no one's perfect. No one has this wrapped up. You're going to have days where it's a mess,
Oh, yeah.
but then you just get right back to it because you know your brain knows the right thing to do.
Yes.
And you just have to guide it along and create and believe. That
Yes.
belief system is what's going to drive you to stay on the path even when you mess up.
Yes.
You've got to believe that it's going to work and it's going to take time. If you know that it's going to take time, that 30 days, you just get started. 90 days, the brain starts recognizing there might be something different. And 6 months into it, you create a new behavior, a new
Right.
habit that's
Right.
going to take you to where you want to go.
Yeah.
So when it comes to procrastination, you just have to give yourself the grace and the
Yeah.
time and know that it's going to take that
Yes.
amount of time and effort on your part.
Yes.
It's not
And
hard.
no, it's not.
It's
And then
tough
when you
to sustain it.
Yeah. And, when you think about it, developing the bad habit took that much longer, maybe, right? For us to develop that. So when you think about it, well, 6 months is not that long. And in the
No.
process, you're changing it for the better. So you're moving forward. And it's like, you start on a path and you just take one little step each day. And then by the end of 6 months, you're going to be at your destination or,
Yeah.
whatever destination you set. And I think it's breaking it down like that. And like you said, giving yourself grace, because no one's perfect. There are days when you're not going to want to do it. And that's okay. You could skip a
Yeah.
day or two, but make, conscious decisions for yourself. Is it okay, 1 or 2 days? That might be the max for me.
Mhm.
I know, like through weight health and all this, I tell my, clients this. You can let's say you've released a lot of weight and you're maintaining a certain weight, and some days you might not want to continue doing the healthy habits and all this and that. Some days you're so frazzled, you've got personal issues going on and things, and you're like, I just don't feel like cooking tonight, and you go for fast food. Okay, maybe I don't know what it is, but you might do that. And that might continue for 2 days. And that's okay. But then also, I have, like, limits where I say up to 3 pounds. You can gain up to 3 pounds,
Mhm.
above your goal weight, but
Mhm.
after that, it becomes more difficult to
Yeah.
implement. So I always say after 2 to 3 days, nip it in the bud,
Mhm.
because it's easier to get back into your routine. Um, there's another trick that we use is, like, the kitchen is closed after a certain time
Yeah.
so that you
That's
don't go
good.
into the kitchen to start browsing in the refrigerators and the cupboards and all this. And, those are like little rules that you set up for yourself. And that's the part of the discipline that
Yeah.
keeps us on those that's evidence for your belief systems as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it
So,
keeps you out of that fight or flight syndrome
yes. Yes.
because it's the safe zone, and you
Exactly.
know it's safe to stay in that zone. I'm a Dale Carnegie
Mhm.
graduate as well,
Mhm.
and, one of the things I learned through that training, it was called the RAM,
Mhm.
reasonable allowable measure,
Oh, I
RAM.
love that.
And it's like if you're on a balance beam
Yes.
and you fall off, what is the reasonable amount of measure that you're gonna
Love that.
fall off
Yes.
safely to get back on?
Gone.
So on both sides of that beam, you have to have a measure that is safe, that is
Yes.
okay to have fallen off to get back on.
Back on. I
And
love
so I've always used that. RAM is so important because we don't. Life doesn't keep us on a balance beam.
Oh, no.
It's not that narrow.
No.
So when we expand it and say, okay, this is the allowable measure.
Right.
This is where I'd like to stay,
Yes.
but I'm allowed this. Then we have the capacity to make better decisions,
Yes.
to use our prefrontal cortex more
Yes.
involved with our limbic system, which is the emotions. We need both
Both.
areas to
Yes.
make an intelligent, good decision.
Decision. Yes.
So
Beautiful.
RAM is real important.
Thank you. Thank you. I've never heard that term, but it makes so much sense to me that you mentioned that. And I think, it's so important. There's so many golden nuggets in this conversation so far. And I think that, our viewers and listeners can gain so much from these little tidbits because like you said, it's easy and it's really about that awareness. And by listening again to something like this, it's a good reminder for you to say,
Mhm.
oh, you know what? I've kind of fallen maybe closer to the edge of that ramp, right? Maybe it's a little too close to the edge. Well, then you could just kind of rein it in a little bit.
Yep.
And it's really about moderating yourself, and really figuring out where are you and how far can you go in that
Yeah.
comfort zone?
Yeah.
And, what do you need to do when you're at that edge? Because we
Mhm.
all know when we get close to that edge.
Yeah.
And it's really about, thinking and actually thinking about where we want our brains to
Mhm.
go, where we want our lives to go. And you were saying the belief system.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see self-help books about
Yes.
drawing boundaries around your relationships or
Mhm.
drawing boundaries around certain things at work and so but I don't see a lot about personal boundaries
Yes.
for myself. How do I keep myself accountable? How do I measure myself?
Yes.
Um, there are I have, if I could share some
Yes,
personal
please.
things,
Please.
things that help me stay in my zone and
Yes.
not perfect, but
Mhm.
in my zone.
Yes.
I have routines.
Yes.
I get up in the morning and I have certain routines that help get my mind working. The first thing I do is my water. I drink at least 20 ounces of water
Yes.
right out of bed.
Yes.
Because we need that. It
Yes.
juices up my brain. Your brain
Exactly.
is 75% water, and it needs to be hydrated. It's been replenishing itself all night. It's been working while you've
Yeah,
been sleeping, so
exactly.
it needs that. So, and then I go into my personal time, whether it's a prayer walk or whether it's reading scripture or I sometimes it's just worship music as
Mhm.
I'm stretching, but I set my mind on really prior
Yes. Yes.
priorities for to set me up for the
Yes.
day, and so then I follow my routine for my, getting ready, my
Yes.
business, and at night, I ask myself, "What did I do that I'm proud of today? Whose life did I impact?" And I'm a woman of faith,
Yes.
so I ask myself, "Is God pleased with something I did for
Mhm.
somebody else? Not
Yes.
for myself, for
Mhm.
somebody else."
Right.
And so I hold myself accountable, as a human, and I hold myself accountable spiritually.
Yes.
And I've done that since I became a mother, and my baby boy is 46 and my daughter's 48.
Okay.
So, I started this habit a long time ago, and I would question myself, hold myself accountable, I should say,
Yes,
at night on being a mother and a
yes,
wife, so
yes,
little tiny habits like that
yes.
really reset us.
Mhm.
We go to bed with the right mindset.
Yes.
We wake up
Yep.
setting ourselves up with the right mindset
Exactly.
for the day.
Mhm.
And just those two tiny little habits will help somebody who is suffering with procrastination, who
Yeah.
wants to always start on Monday.
Yes, yes.
So,
I
I
love
mean,
that.
your thoughts on
Oh,
that?
totally. I am in agreement with you. I have my own little rituals that I do in the morning and before I go to sleep. And I make sure that I do my gratitudes and before I go to sleep, definitely. But it's also thinking about how I go to sleep feeling like my brain is ready for a new day. So that I
Mhm.
kind of program it, tell my brain, listen, I want this is the way I want the day went like this today. Maybe I want it a little better, maybe I want it to be just as good, but these are the patterns I wanna keep. This is the
Mhm.
path that I want to be on, so set me up for that, and of course, when I get up, I have my water, I do my mirror exercise, and
Mhm.
of course I do smile, and there's one thing that I do in the morning, when I'm lying in bed, when I just wake up, my eyes open, I do a stretch called the victory stretch, and I
Mhm.
do victory, another victorious day, and that's how
Yeah.
I start my day. And those are tiny little rituals that I've built up so that my day can be bookended with success.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's really, I think those are so important. Those are little habits that we've learned for our own success. And of
Mhm.
course, we're not perfect. Like I said, the other day I had an incident where I snapped at my dog and I felt really bad about it
Mhm.
because I had so much on my plate and somebody triggered me in a way that, and like
Mhm.
you were saying
Mhm.
about boundaries, right?
Mhm.
And, of course, my dog doesn't know that. Out of habit, she's like, "It's this time, time for our walk." So she's like this, and she goes like this, "Time for our walk." And I'm like, "Can you give me a minute?" And I was like, "Whoa, what was that about?"
Where did that come from?
Yeah, I was like, "Oh my gosh." I felt so bad
Mhm.
afterwards. But, it's little things like that. And at least, because we have those book habits or those rituals that bookend our days, we can reflect and think, and
Yeah.
it helps us to create a better day for ourselves.
Right.
And
Right. And because consciously
yes,
you were able to reset in the moment,
yes.
can you imagine there was a day where I didn't reset in the
Oh,
moment,
yeah.
and the
Mhm.
day went on, and by the end of the day, asking myself those and I had a whole list of things that I'm thinking, "I don't wanna repeat that. I don't wanna keep doing that." And
Exact
so, because it takes time to
Yes.
carve
Yes.
a new pathway, to
Yes.
interrupt those patterns, given time, of course, that was many years ago. Now I have challenges because I'm imperfect, but I don't have those challenges.
Right.
I'm
Right.
able to reset in the moment, or I'm
Exactly.
able to sometimes even catch it before it even comes out of my mouth, or
Right.
I behave a certain way.
Right.
I don't have to act on every thought I
No.
have.
Exactly.
And I
Exact
think that's important for people to know.
Yes.
Just because you're thinking it and it's ugly thinking and it's ugly words or whatever, doesn't mean you have to put action to that
Right.
thought.
Right. Right.
That's the time to interrupt the pattern and flip it.
Exactly.
Eh, you know,
Exactly.
and when you start doing that, then you're maturing
Yes.
in the process,
Yes.
and you've done your homework, so to
Yes,
speak.
yes,
So,
and your body just naturally will gravitate towards that,
yeah.
because I was saying to someone, easily I could have snapped, and then I could have gone directly to the fridge or the pantry and figured out what I wanted to, you know, use
Mhm.
to stuff down those feelings, right?
Yes.
And that would have
Yes.
been my MO in the past, and I was like, "Well, at least I didn't do that," but and I did catch myself, and apologize to my little baby, but yeah.
Yeah.
But, it was those things, and I'm like, "Wow," it's still we still need to catch ourselves doing that, and
Mhm.
it's constant, like, our mentor Joseph always says, "It's what went well and what can we do better to
Yeah.
improve the next day?" And it's
Yeah.
always about creating those patterns in ourselves,
Mhm. Yeah.
and, it's
And you
Mhm.
bring up a good point. In these moments too, you made me think of something. We don't celebrate enough.
Yes,
If
yes,
we would just pause for a moment and just, "Oh, gosh, Aoi, you did great.
yeah,
That was a good choice. You recognized it, you apologized to puppy, and, and you go on.
yep,
And or, hey, let's celebrate together. Let's go for a short walk."
yeah,
You know, and we just don't recognize those little wins, that set us up because the brain has a reward system too.
yes,
Since we're talking about brain health, and
yes,
that's really what all of this is brain health
brain
and
health, yes,
understanding it. It
yes,
has a reward system. It
yes,
has so many chemical hormones in there.
mhm,
Flood and dopamine is so important to the
yes,
brain because it
yes,
brings us pleasure instead of
yes,
gorging on something, false pleasure because it only
yes,
lasts for a moment and then it
yes,
leaves us feeling terrible. The dopamine fixes those hits
yes,
by
yes,
celebrating
yes,
are released and it makes us
yes,
feel good.
yes.
And then the brain wants to do it again.
Yes, exactly. And I always say that, with that celebration piece, I always say, we celebrate our children, we celebrate our pets all the time. We celebrate everyone else, but we forget to celebrate ourselves.
Sure.
And one of the principles that, our mentor says is celebration is one of the key elements of neuroencoding. It's like you interrupt a pattern, you do something good for yourself, celebrate it.
Yeah.
And the best way to celebrate it is with a smile, because by smiling, you release dopamine immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, that's so important. And again, if we understand how basic things
mhm,
work in our brains, the organ, the brain, then we can set up the psychology and the
coaching.
mindset,
Yes.
the belief system
Systems.
to support the right things to
Yes.
happen in our brain.
Yes.
So
Yes. And it is,
that's
yeah.
the outcome.
Yeah. And the thing is, we do have control over it. We can control it. We don't have to be controlled by outside forces on that.
Yeah, there's so much unconsciously that seeps in to our brains.
Yes.
Things we don't even know about, and until I don't know about you, have you ever been someplace where all of a sudden something pops up in your head and you think, "Oh my gosh, where did that come from?"
Yep.
You
Yep.
know? And so
Definitely.
things are in our subconscious and
Yes.
sometimes we don't even know it.
Yeah.
But if we don't prep and take advantage of the neuroplastic um, abilities of our
Yes.
brain, if we're not aware of it and we don't take advantage of that, when those pop up, we're gonna respond to it, and we
Yes.
don't have to.
No.
We
And
can
I, yeah.
set it up to respond the way we want it to respond.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly, and I think that's what we need to be. I'm glad that we're talking about this here so that people can listen to it and know that, and maybe share it with other people because
yeah.
it's something that can be accessed, and we
Mhm.
have access to it. We don't need to be brainwashed by whatever society tells us or other people
Yeah.
want us to believe, right?
Mhm.
We can make our own choices, and, I think it's so important that we share this, so thank you so much. I mean, I wish we had more time to go. I could talk to you forever about this
Oh,
and
that's
all that,
okay.
but
Can I
thank you.
leave just
Yes,
one
of
little
course.
formula that has helped
Yes,
me a lot in my
of
pathway?
course. Of
And I wrote it
course.
down so I could be real quick and not forget
Okay.
it.
Okay.
But we talked about decision fatigue because we
Yes.
make 35,000 decisions
Yes.
a day. So a way to hone in on the neuroplasticity of our brain is it's called Dr. Olinson. It's a European name, sorry,
Mhm.
came up with this model. It's called the WHOOP model,
Okay.
WOOP. And
Okay.
W stands for wish. You
Mhm.
first ask what you want. What
Yes.
do you want to
What?
accomplish
Mhm.
just today?
Yeah.
O is for outcome. What
Mhm.
does success look like today for you? Uh, the second O is for obstacle. What might get in the way?
Mm.
Today, this week, kind of anticipate that and be ready for it because you know something's going to happen.
Right.
Just be ready. Get your brain ready for it. And then the P stands for plan. What will you do when?
Mm.
Bl- And finish the sentence.
That is what that is
Yep.
actually very,
Wish,
very good.
outcome, obstacle, and plan.
Plan. That is actually a very good acronym, and yes, thank you for sharing that, and to our viewers, hey, I hope you wrote it down. If not, you know, rewind or whatever you do to re-listen to it because that is so important, and that is something that you can just hold with you, just every
Yeah.
day say, "Oh, wait, what was the what was the obstacle?" Or what yeah, because life, you plan it out. At
Yeah.
least have a plan B, right? They always say have
Yep.
a plan B for everything, and it gets you prepared so that you're not caught unawares. Yeah.
Yeah. Just anticipate it. It's going to happen. If not today, sometime.
Yeah, and that's, when things like that stack up, that's when we get into the I'll start on Monday syndrome, right?
Yeah, it sure does. So
So,
thank you so much. This has
oh,
been
thank you.
so much fun.
Likewise, likewise. I'm so glad you were able to make it and able to do this with me. So thank you very much. And our talker speaker today was Stella Tokar. And people, if you enjoyed this episode, thank you for being here. And thank you for listening and taking the time to listen and delve into this because your brain is such an important, important part of us that we kind of forget about. So,
Mhm.
and if you want to explore more about this and explore more about me, you can find me in the Brain to Belly community. You can find me on my website. All of that is over there. Although I specialize in body and food issues, it all stems down to
Mm,
procrastination in a lot of ways and
mhm.
how you deal with fear. So,
And I
until
will
next
tell
time.
you, this lady will take care of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stella. Well, so does Stella. Stella is a magnificent woman. She is an amazing, amazing, just person in general. I just have so much respect for her. So thank you so much for being here. And everyone, until next time, remember, you don't have to become someone new. You just have to remember who you are. And remember, you don't have to wait until Monday to start anything. So, on that note, thank you, everyone, and we'll stop.